Alright guys, today I'll be reviewing SkeiKra at Busch Gardens Tampa. Now, this was the first B&M dive coaster in the US, and you could kind of tell that by the layout, but you know what? I actually like this and Griffin's layout a lot better than the others, and mainly because of the restraints, but I'll get into all of that in this review. So, to start off, let's go over just how this got here. So, obviously, the dive coaster started back with Oblivion and kind of spread throughout Europe a bit, but then came over here. And it's basically the bubonic plague over here. Just park after park buying mid B&M after mid B&M that they could be spending money on RMCs and all that. But at the start, when it was just this and Griffin, it wasn't that bad. These were actually treats, which I know sounds pretty crazy nowadays, but yeah, come to think of it, if I was an enthusiast back then, I would really be hyped to see this come to the US. And really, this and Griffin, they're the only two dives besides Baron and Oblivion and pretty much any of the ones in Europe that are really well themed, but in the US at least, these are the only two that I could really see myself wanting to re-ride, I guess, is the thing I'm getting at, because this ride here actually has some airtime, unlike the others. So before we get into that ride experience, let's go over all the annoying little things you have to go through to actually get on this ride. So for starters, this is a problem with the rest of BGT. You have to put your stuff in a locker, and you have to pay for it. So we got a all-day $10 transferable locker. It's garbage, that you have to spend money to ride rides, basically, but I mean, it's really stupid. They gotta do something about that. And I hear last year they used to have bins, but yeah, they just don't anymore. And yeah, that really sucks, because it really sucks when you have to basically make your ride an upcharge attraction when it's one of the headlining coasters. So yeah, I gotta do something about that. But the queue itself is pretty deserted, not a whole lot going on in there. Just like the rest of BGT, the operations really aren't that good. I mean, I got here really early in the morning because I wanted to hit Tigris before that got an obnoxious line because it's a skyrocket too. But yeah, it had some of the better ops in the park, but that being said, it's still BGT ops. That's like saying one of the rides at Six Flags America has good ops for Six Flags America. It still doesn't have good ops, but, you know, it was bearable, this at least. They at least looked like they wanted the paycheck, if that makes sense. So, yeah, you'll pull down your OTS restraints. These are the deal breakers for every other B&M dive except this and Griffin and, all the ones in Europe or whatever. But yeah, at least here in the US, the restraints are the deal breakers for all the B&M dives except this and Griffin. Because let me tell you, these OTS restraints are so much better than the vests. I don't care about my head getting thrown around, alright? These B&M dives, they're smooth. Even if it was as rough as Anaconda or something, I don't care. I just want airtime. And you can't get that with the vests. You pull down your vest and you're just stapled in there. You can't feel anything, Pipeline, I feel like you get a bit more give. And that's not really the same thing. But with all the other vest restraints, it's really up against your collarbone. You can't move at all. You're guaranteed to get stapled. But with these OTSs, I'm telling you, you give yourself a little room, and you'll just come popping right out of your seat on all those drops. So definitely bring these back. I don't know why B&M keeps wanting these vests, especially since I hear there's something about the trains with the vest restraints that makes the track a bit rougher. I don't really know. That's just what I've heard and observed from other enthusiasts riding dives. But yeah, it's not good. Please just start bringing these OTS restraints back. These are the wider trains. They're definitely not one of the skinnier ones. But yeah, I would definitely recommend going on the edge. I only rode back row, far right edge or load side, but yeah, I imagine that's probably like the best row to be in, best spot maybe, because yeah, I'm a back row rider for dives, which I know sounds weird, but I'll get into all that in just a short moment. So you're going to start by pulling out of the station, taking a little turn to the right, nothing there, and then you're going to head up your lift hill. This is a hyper. Doesn't really feel a whole lot different than Valraven or Griffin, just sort of the same thing. Go up your lift hill, get that panoramic turn, and you're going to head down your first drop, which I would really prefer it if it didn't have the dive aspect. I could only imagine how great that ejector in the back would be if you weren't trimmed at the top. But it's a dive coaster, so, they gotta hang you over, because that's kind of the reason why you buy a dive coaster. But, yeah, I'd like for an enthusiast event or something to just let it rip over the top on this or Griffin and see what happens, because especially in the back row, you do get some really good floater airtime on this drop, because, yeah, again, you got that gap between your shoulders and the top of the restraint, so you can just pop right out, and it's a good, 3 or 4 seconds of sustained floater. It's really good, and it's not super weak either. You get a bit chucked out of there in the back. In the front, you're not really going to get a whole lot, maybe a little bit of floater. I get it, the front gives you that view over the edge, but I really couldn't care less. I'm not a GP, I'm not falling for that, so I'm a back row rider on this for sure. After that, you're gonna hit the pullout and not really feel a whole lot of positives there, but the Immelman to follow is actually pretty intense. The start of the pullout, I should say, isn't very intense, but then as you keep climbing up into the Immelman, you're gonna feel some G's. And then you're going to level out, feel a little bit of G's, not a whole lot on that next valley. And then you're going to turn up into the mid-course. And there's no real pop of airtime into the mid-course. I thought because of the profiling on the right side, maybe you'd get a little something. But no, there really wasn't anything, which was unfortunate, but whatever. So, yeah, this mid-course will trim you to a halt. You're not going to fly through this at all. It's going to be a real sloth-like moment here. I don't even know how else to describe it. You're just crawling at such a glacial rate. It's awful. But what comes after is definitely the second best part of the ride. It's the drop off the mid-course. And you get a great pop of airtime out of this too. Actually, maybe stronger than the actual first drop, which is really good, especially since you're heading into a tunnel. That's really the one thing this does better than Griffin, is it has that tunnel on the second drop, so the second drop's better on this for sure. And then after that, you're going to hit a really, and I mean really dull turnaround, and this is really where this ride loses me. It doesn't do anything. I get this was an older layout. I get rides like Flying Apsaris and whatever else in China, Diving Coaster, they all have similar aspects like this, but yeah, it really sucks that they couldn't figure out something else, and they did for Griffin. I really appreciate that, but it really sucks they couldn't figure out something else to put here at the time, because this is a real dead spot on the ride. Absolutely no positives or laterals or nothing. But after this, you're going to hit the splashdown. That is a really cool visual, I'll give it that. You don't really get wet, especially, I was thinking you might have gotten wet in the back row, especially since I was on the edge, but no, not really anything. And then, whereas Griffin ends out with a weird surprise ejector kink, this really doesn't do anything into the final breaks. So that's kind of sad, but, it's still a good ride. I'll say this thing is butter smooth, and I've heard some complaints about Iron Menace actually being pretty rough already, but I actually think that would be better on something like this. Even with the OTS restraints and not the vests, I really wish this had some sort of bite to it, something to give it some personality. Because yes, I love the sustained airtime on those two drops. The Immelman's fun, the splashdown's a cool effect, whatever. but it's just weaker Griffin in my eyes. It's a whole lot better than Valraven, I'll give it that, but it's just one spot below Griffin in my rankings, and yeah, that's pretty much how I think of this, just slightly lesser Griffin. So for SkeiKra's final score, I'm going to have to give it a 771 out of 1,000. I mean, that's a pretty accurate score. I feel like that's generous, if anything, because it's not really unique at all. It doesn't do anything out of the ordinary, but, you know, at the end of the day, I do really like those 2 pops of airtime in the back row, especially with those restraints, not having those goddamn vests pressing against you the entire time. So yeah, let me know what you guys think of SkeiKra down in the comments below. Is this a whole lot better than the vest restraint dives for you? Make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.